All right, thank you guys so much. So we spent a lot of time this morning talking about that we're going to be working on ways to communicate and giving you guys some information and giving you some tools. And I think this is going to be one of the sessions where we really get to put some of those things into play and actually have you guys just spend some time in some basic conversations, but also giving you a little bit of insight into dads, how your brains work, and daughters, how your brains work, and why at times they are absolutely at odds from each other and why that can make it difficult. But also some tips on how you can improve that. I was telling the girls earlier this morning that in my role as a therapist, I feel a lot of times I'm a double agent. And especially when I'm working with teenagers and teenagers are coming in and they're talking about challenges that they're having, including school and siblings and boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, all those things. And when they're talking about things at home and family, they're talking about challenges they're having with communication, or my parents don't give me enough respect or freedom, or give me those types of things. And then when I talk to the parents without the kids there, the parents are saying the same thing. And so I feel that in one of my roles as a counselor, it's to help them each understand. It's kind of like doing couples counseling, actually, but just a different kind of couple than you would traditionally think of. So I'm hoping that this presentation we can work on some tips on how to improve that. So just some basic things for dads here real quick. Talking about emotions causes women to become more relaxed. There's a chemical that is released in the brain that actually reduces stress in women. So when women want to talk and sit around and process things, that's because it helps calm them down. That's actually a hardwired thing in our brains. And again, that's why they're more process-focused rather than solution-focused. Whereas with guys, a lot of times, if a problem is presented, we want to fix it. For women and girls, when a problem is presented, they want to talk about it. And it doesn't necessarily, that's not good or bad. It's one of the things that I talk about in the fatherhood class I teach at Concordia is we focus more on the differences between how moms and dads parent. And I say several times throughout that class, one is not better than the other. Men don't parent better than moms. Moms don't parent better than dads. They just do it differently, and children and families actually benefit from both. And I think that this actually is another example that illustrates that it doesn't mean better or worse, it just means different. As far as just actual brain stuff, some of the studies that they've done on brains that are pretty amazing, and I think shed some good light into this, is that women have 7 emotion processing centers in the brain that language is connected to as well. So not only can women think about feelings better, they can talk about them better. And as you can see, men have 2. So it's not that we can't, it's we can't do it as well as women can. So think about, like, I don't know, the best example would be maybe like a Ferrari engine versus like a Pinto engine. You can still get from point A to point B. You're just going to do it in a little bit of a different way. And I think when it comes to communication styles, that's something that can often be a challenge when we're both when men and women or dads and daughters are missing each other. I'm seeing some of the dads nodding, and I'm guessing that may be coming from marital relationships, perhaps as well. It kind of explains a little bit about why there's a disconnect at times. Again, just kind of feeding on that same point, women have larger vocabularies than men, so they can use more words to express those emotions and to describe them. So daughters, when you're asking your dad how his day was or what he thinks about something, and he says, and he kind of grunts a little bit, we just don't necessarily have words. That's words to guys. If there was a room of guys, we could speak almost just like that. I don't know. It makes sense to us, but it is something that can be pretty foreign to girls and women. So something to be aware of. And I think this is something that's really key, and we talked about this a little bit with the girls this morning, is that women need to hear words in order to believe them. They need to hear them, and not just once, not just twice, but over and over again. Don't assume, so for dads, don't assume that they know what you're thinking. If you love your daughters, obviously you love your daughters, or you would, because you're here today, tell them that. Tell them during the times that we have to talk here today. Tell them on the ride home. Tell them every day. Tell them multiple times a day until they get sick of it. If you start getting the eye roll and I know you love me, Dad, you're on the right track. You're probably doing it just enough. And so for daughters, here's the flip side. When your dad talks about emotions, it stresses him out. That's why a lot of dads want to just get away when you're talking about emotional stuff. They want to flee because that same chemical in your brain that calms you when you talk about it, it's a different chemical, but when your dad talks about emotions, makes them anxious, makes them just want to get the heck away from it. And so keep that in mind when you're talking about that. This is not to say that you shouldn't be talking about those things, but be aware of that as you're bringing that up. Dads are more likely to show they love their daughters than to tell them. So dad's going to go change the oil in your car for you. Dad's going to wash your car. Dad's going to do things or make things for you. Again, that's just how men tend to communicate, is they're going to do it by showing. It's the same thing that we talked about earlier, where women tend to be more process-oriented and men tend to be more solution-focused. So for dads, they're going to do something. They're going to show up here today. They're going to be more intentional about what they're doing generally as a way to express themselves. And again, we talked about that dads being solution-focused rather than process-focused. So, I mean, what's the problem? We're in some ways speaking totally different languages. So how do we ever make this dynamic work? How do we make it work with our dads? How do we make it work with our daughters? How do we make it work with our significant others when there's a lot of biological stuff that seems to be working against us? So here's a couple things that we can do about it. So I'll start with daughters, and then we'll go back to the dads. Daughters, be really specific with your dad in what you need from him. Let him know. If you need a shoulder to cry on, if you need to vent, if you need him to do something specific, just let him know that. Because dad, otherwise he might assume, and he may assume incorrectly, which is going to maybe cause him to feel uncomfortable and feel, oh man, I missed the opportunity again. Just be really direct with him. Tell him exactly what you're needing. If you're having relationship problems and you just need him to listen, tell him that, because remember, being solution-oriented, if a boy breaks your heart, your dad's going to want to go break that boy. So just tell him, I don't need you to do anything about it. I just need some space. I just need to sit here. I just need to tell you what's going on. Car rides are an excellent way to do that, because when you start talking about emotions and dad starts to get a little bit anxious about it, he can't go anywhere, especially if he's driving. So that's a good time to just have those conversations, to just talk and to be able to just be in that space together. Show your dad that you love him and why he's special to you. So do little things for him. It's harder as you get older and you're spending more time with your friends and doing other things, but do little things, maybe silly things that you used to do when you were little that you thought, oh, that was something that I did when I was a kid. Keep doing some of those things. Or when you go home today, think about ways maybe that you used to show your dad that you love him. I think about my 6-year-old Grace, who almost every day is bringing me home a picture or something that she drew from school. And she's saying, I made this for you, Dad. And I'm taking it as though it's, the Mona Lisa. It's the greatest thing ever. Hey, thank you for thinking of me and doing that. As you get older, you can be a little bit more silly with it because, again, it's a little bit awkward when you're older. It's not as simple as drawing a little stick figure picture with I heart you on it or something. But it's that type of idea, trying to do those things that show your dad that you love him. And give him the benefit of the doubt. That he is trying to do the best that he can. I think Rick had mentioned this morning that when puberty hits, when adolescent hits, when the teenage years hit, especially with dads and daughters, there's kind of becomes this awkward, okay, I'm not exactly sure how to handle a lot of these things. Or there's plenty of those, go talk to your mother about that. But given the benefit of the doubt that he's doing the best that he can, that he's trying the best that he can, and knowing that he needs you just as much as you need him to help provide that support. So for dads, listen without solving. So that's kind of what we hinted at a couple minutes ago. Your daughters don't always need you to jump in and solve the problem right away. Sometimes that's what they'll need. Trust them that they'll tell you that. If they want you to solve a problem or brainstorm with them, trust that's what they'll do. But resist that urge to jump in and solve that problem, because when your daughter is able to solve those problems on her own, it actually is really good for self-esteem, not just for daughters, for sons as well. When children can work through those solutions on their own, it really helps them out. And you can be there to kind of support and guide and validate if they're on the right track. But kind of let them process just by your listening. Your presence is so important. Tell her you love her and why she's special to you. We talked about earlier that women need to hear things over and over again because once they hear them, then they start to believe them. The girls and I, this morning, we were talking about that, about the messages that they tell themselves, the messages that they hear from you, the messages they hear from society, from friends, from family. Tell her that you love her. Tell her not only that you love her, but tell her why you love her, what you love about her. And ask her what she needs from you. Don't assume that she needs you to solve the problems. Ask her, just in the same way that she is, asking you, being specific with what she needs. Ask her what she needs. If she's starting to talk and it's about emotions, and you're feeling yourself that those hormones in your brain that are starting to tell you, "Ooh, this is uncomfortable. I'm stressed out." Before you get to that point of kind of too stressed out, step back for a second and just ask her again. Ask her specifically, "What do you need from me right now?" Because that's going to help you know, do I just need to listen? Do I need to do something? Do I need to go clean my gun? Do I need, what is it that I need to do in this situation to help her feel more comfortable? Again, tell her you love her and why she's special to you. I put that 3 times not by mistake. I put that up there 3 times because it's that important. Tell her, tell her, tell her, tell her. And ask her how you can support her. In the same way, ask her what she needs from you. Ask her how you can support her in what she's doing. Ask her how you can support her in her sports. Ask her how you can support her in her music, in her writing, in her schoolwork. I hear a lot of parents talk about, my kids are doing homework and schoolwork that I don't even know how to do, and they're in 8th grade or 9th grade or 10th grade. That's okay. Still ask anyway. Do they need a tutor? Do they need somebody who can provide them the support that maybe you're not able to provide for various reasons? I'm dreading when my daughter gets to be that age where I don't know how to help you with your math anymore, so we'll have to figure out a way to do that together. But again, ask her how you can support her with things. Tell her you love her and why she is so special to you. We've talked about some of the stuff being a little bit uncomfortable today, and both for dads and for daughters. So, daughters, here's your chance. One of those questions up there says, what was my most embarrassing moment? If any of you learned something embarrassing about your father that you would like to share, there's an open mic, and you can't get in trouble for it on the way home either. That's the other rule. Anybody? There she is.
My dad went to a party and he didn't bring a swimsuit because he didn't know there was a pool. And so they had some extra ones upstairs, and he went and put one on and he jumped into the pool, and they were too big and they completely flew off.
Thank you. Oh, here's another one.
When my dad was a kid, he fell asleep chewing gum and it got in his hair, and he tried hiding it all day until lunch, and kids found it at lunch at school, and everyone was making fun of him.
And see, look what happened. Anybody else? Oh, there's one. Am I okay to walk around with this? Okay. Someone's squeaking at me.
When my dad was a kid, he was in church and it was like dead silent and he farted.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you so much, dads. Thanks for being good sports about that. I'm sure there's many other stories that aren't getting told that maybe should. But anyway, that could be good conversation on the way home or at another time. Okay, so here's one thing that I want you guys to spend a couple minutes doing right now. And in your participant manuals, you have each section you can take notes on. And this is one that I really want you to write down and be intentional, because my hope is that this is something that you'll be able to keep and refer back to from time to time, hopefully in the near future, maybe today, maybe this weekend, maybe in the next week or so. Again, these are just some examples. So one of the things that's important in any of our relationships, whether it be with significant others, whether it be with children, is that we look at our relationships as a bank account, and with the idea that we're putting more deposits in, so good things, good conversations, good moments spent together, then we're taking withdrawals. Withdrawals would be fights, arguments, disagreements. Some are big withdrawals, some are little withdrawals. Some are big deposits, some are little deposits. So what I did here was gave a list of just some things that you could do together that all are deposits. Certainly the list is not limited to those, but of the ones that are up there, dads, I want you to pick 3 of those that you would like to do with your daughter, and I want you to really be intentional about following through with that. Because as we talked about earlier, it's about showing your daughters and following through and doing the things that you say that you're going to do that are really important. So pick 3. You don't have to let your daughter know which ones they are, but pick 3 and make it a point to do those. And girls, I want you to do the exact same thing. They can be the same. They can be different. You can share your lists on the way home. You can share your lists after lunch. Doesn't matter, but just for right now, just keep the list to yourself. And pay special attention to that bottom one. There's some young ladies in here who look to be driving age or soon to be driving age. No pressure to buy. It doesn't say buy a new car. It just says test drive. Go hang out. Go get in that car that you've wanted. Do something together. So my guess is, girls, you're only going to need to pick 2 because that's probably going to be on most of your lists. But the idea being is to have fun with it. Have fun with each other. Just like the questions earlier were meant to serve as kind of a diving board to get you started. Same thing here. Be mindful, be intentional about the things that you guys can be doing for each other to help put some deposits in your relationship account. I think that's the last slide. So keep that in mind with your communication. If you guys were talking earlier and you were in mid-sentence before I came back up, remember that. Come back to that. Either here in the next little while when you're going to have a chance or at some point later in the day to go back and have those types of conversations with each other. And as you can see from the questions that were up there, it doesn't have to be anything super deep. Some of them they might be. What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations? And just being able to share those with each other. And again, it goes both ways. So girls, I won't have your dads do this, but talk to them about your most embarrassing moment. Talk to them about, the things that are important to you. Ask them who their best friends are. Ask them about what things were like when they were younger. I know that that's one of the things that I have valued, that I found in the last couple of years is when I'm with my parents, asking them things that they remember about me when I was little. I used to play basketball quite a bit and ask them, was there ever a game or anything that you remembered? Because I have some memories of good games I played or embarrassing things I did on the court or tripping over myself or whatever. But I was always curious if they remembered those things or if they remembered something I didn't. So ask them about what you were like when you were younger. I see that in my son. I see myself in him a lot in some good ways, but in some not so good ways that make me want to call my mom and just say, I'm sorry. Like when he folds his arms and is stubborn and refuses to do what we're asking him to do, I see the stubbornness that I have in him as well. But I know that because I have had those conversations with my mom, with my dad. Hey, what was I like? Those are great conversations, starting points to have to just dive in to get to know our roots a little bit more.